Welcome to Miller's Monsters. I'm Mr. Beelzebub. This young lady, or old lady, get up, there you go, they can see you now, is Count Luna. And behind me is Edgar P., the Scully, Keeper of the Mask. And we're going to talk about some true life inspirations for Scream. And Scream 6 is out in the theaters. It's doing pretty well. I think it did over 37 million in its opening weekend. And come over here, please, so people can see you. Thank you. And I think that's going to help push March to over 100 million for the month. But the first story, and there's a couple unfortunate and gruesome murders that had inspiration for the Scream series. The first one is from the 1950s, and it's the murder of Janet Christman. And Janet Christman is 13 years old, well developed for her age, and is set out to babysit one night, and she's babysitting for the Romax. And she gets there, and they go over the ground rules, as all babysitters get when they take care of the youngins. And one is, the boy likes to sleep with the radio on when the parents aren't home. Number 2 is keep the front door and back door locked. And number 3 is if someone comes to the door, make sure you turn the porch light on. And of course, number 4 is don't let anyone in that you don't know. And this is a particularly gloomy night. Not much going on in the town, but apparently a lot of people were willing to brave the weather and go out. And a friend of the Romax were the Muellers. And Robert Mueller calls Mrs. Christman asking if Janet was available to babysit, and she politely says no, she's already babysitting for the Romax. And so everybody goes about their business, and everything's normal at the house. And at the deputy station, Boone County Sheriff's Office, they get a phone call at 10:30, and it's a phone call of a woman screaming, "Come quick!" And then there's these blood-curdling screams, and the phone goes dead. Well, at that time in the 1950s, no one was stationed at the, how they had that phone desk where they transferred calls and all that, so they were unable to trace the call. So being unable to trace the call, he just goes about his business. Well, the Romax come home at 1:45 that evening, and they found Janet dead in the living room in a pool of blood. And of course they call the police right away. The police come out and they start their investigation, and they look at the room, and looks like a struggle has taken place. Okay, and furniture's strewn about, and the front window's broken, and eventually they find they also find that she was strangled with a cord. And so they're processing the scene. They're like, man, this looks staged. And they find where the iron is, which is in a separate room, which wouldn't have been easily readable for anyone to find unless they knew the layout of the house. And the front window was smashed to look like someone entered there, but the curtains and the window coverings weren't moved at all. So now they're suspicious. And the other thing is that the porch light is on, and that both the front and back door are unlocked. So now this leads them to believe that she knew her attacker. And so the investigation goes on, and as it continues, people remember, well, Robert Mueller made some off-colored comments about Janet at one time, and asked if people thought she was a virgin. And it's also known throughout the town that Robert Mueller is hypersexual, as they described it. And he's also made advances to Mrs. Romack in the past that she found unsettling. And So this all leads to Robert Mueller being the #1 suspect. But during the investigation, you have two police departments feuding. You have the Boone Police Department and another larger police department investigating, and they weren't cooperating very well. They're at odds at each other. So the sheriff, Boone County Sheriff's Office, decides, okay, they're going to pick up Robert Mueller and question him at a farmhouse. Okay, so no one knows they picked him up. They question him at a farmhouse, and there's another thing they noticed was small puncture wounds in her face, and Robert Mueller also always carried around a metal pencil, okay, which would perfectly fit the punctures in his face. So they take him, they question him, they get no answers from him. They have him do a lie detector test, which really doesn't show that he was that deceptive. This guy's pretty good. And so now they're left with that information and trying to go to court. But the problem is, since they were at feuds with the other department, they never got a warrant for his arrest. So none of that is admissible in court. And essentially, Robert Mueller got away with murder. Everybody believed he did it. And he lived until he was 80, unfortunately. And this inspired an urban legend, okay? The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, which I'll probably have to pull up at a later date. Two movies, Black Christmas in 1974 and When a Stranger Calls in 1979. And this relates to Scream is because the opening scene in Scream was paying homage to those classics. And that's how the fictionalized retelling in Scream opening came about. If you like what you heard so far, please take a moment, ring the bell, hit the subscribe button, set yourself up for notifications, and hit that like button. And please tell your friends and neighbors about us. And in a minute, we'll go over the other true crime event, which is a very, very gruesome serial killer. Here. Come on. There you go. Good girl. All right, so our second true crime event that helped inspire the movie series Scream it happened in 1990 and was called the Gainesville Ripper. And the Gainesville Ripper was a serial killer, and this occurred in August of 1990. And there was a series of 5 murders that took place, and the killer kept in his kill kit a mask, a ski mask, gloves, a screwdriver to pry things open with, duct tape, of course, to bind his victims, and a combat knife, which became the murder weapon of choice by our killer. And so he went about and in different ways stalked these women, got into their apartments by prying open patio doors. Either they were in there already and he waited till they were asleep, and he would, thank you. Am I boring you? And he would sneak up on them, or he would get inside before they got home and lay in wait and ambush them like he did with one woman. And once he got control of his victim through threats, he would get them to comply, and he would sexually abuse them, and then he would mutilate the bodies, stabbing them, either in the chest or in the back. And there we go again. Come on, we got more filming. Just pace yourself, young lady. Or stabbing them in the back. And then he would pose them in degrading positions, usually unclothed, in either provocative positions. And at one point, he even decapitated one of his victims and put the head on a bookcase propped up against a heavy object. In another case, he went in and when he broke in and was sneaking up on the sleeping victim, he found a man on the couch, and that didn't deter him at all. He just snuck up on the man and started stabbing him in the chest. And then after his crimes, he would clean up the bodies with dish soap or chemical, and was pretty good at leaving no evidence, although he did get sloppy near the end where he left a couple pieces of bloody duct tape. Then on August 25th, the town was in panic by then. Okay, students were leaving the town in droves. Many of them, never came back. This should sound familiar. The university was closed down. News people were descending upon the town in droves, trying to get the headline of this serial killer. But suddenly things stopped, and it seemed to go quiet. Well, in 1990, September 7th, a man by the name of Danny Rollins was arrested for trying to rob a Winn-Dixie. And during his arrest, he became attached to an earlier crime. Not attached, he was never considered a suspect, but it dawned on him he was in this area. And in 1989, a similar killing took place to where a woman was sexually assaulted. Unfortunately, her father and young brother were murdered just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they put two and two together and said, well, this is similar to the movies up in Gainesville, and they urged the police up there to look into Danny a little bit more. And what they did is they eventually found his campsite. And his campsite, after leaving town, he tried to rob a bank unsuccessfully and had to flee police. So they had found his campsite earlier and had confiscated some screwdrivers with marks on them that looked like they were used for prying things open, and some strange tape recordings of him, possibly talking about things about the murder. So, and they knew he was in the area at the time, so they're getting close to getting their suspect. And what finally put the nail in Danny's coffin was that he couldn't keep quiet. He started talking to cellmates about it, and eventually, with all the evidence they had now put together, and his cellmates hearing his on-hand knowledge, he was found guilty and executed for his crimes, and rightfully so. So screenwriter Kevin Williamson, after watching the news reports on the Gainesville Ripper, that's when he formulated his idea for Scream. And so that's how the movie came about. And then, of course, these killings, the Gainesville Ripper, were very, very violent, and mutilated bodies and all that. And his agent told him that he had to tone the violence down, way down, or the movie would be unsellable. So that's kind of how we got the movie Scream as it is now. Now, as with a lot of these movies, there's always a legend about the mask, and there is a legend about the Scream mask, the elongated face. And so the story goes that while visiting a costume shop, Wes Craven and his producer found this mask of an elongated mask screaming, and they said, that's the mask that's going to be perfect for our killer. Well, this mask was designed by one of the shop employees, and it's based on Edvard Munch's The Scream artwork. The end for this story. I hope you liked what you saw. Hit the like button, ring the bell, hit subscribe, set yourself up for notifications so you don't miss another true life movie inspiration segment. And please tell your friends to like and subscribe as well. I thank you in advance, and I will talk to you later.